Thank you everyone for joining in the call. Thank you Utsav, for addressing our audience on Saturday. We'll first start with your introduction for the benefit of our audience. Mr. Utsav Mehta is a vice president and fund manager at PGIM India Asset Management. He has over 13 years experience in equity research and fund management. He has previously worked with uh, Edelweiss Asset Management, Ambit Capital, and MF Advisors LLP. And he's a CFA by pedigree. So thank you, Utsav, for joining in.
My pleasure, and thank you so much to you and your audience for taking time out on a Saturday to speak to me.
Yeah. Utsav is currently is a co-fund manager at PGIM India Midcap Fund. And the topic of the session is to understand the midcap space. And one particular question that we often get. So for the benefit of our audience, if you can clear what are midcaps and what is the range of the size of companies that are classified as midcaps?
Okay. I probably won't define it as size, but I'll make it simpler. Let's rank all the companies in India by market capitalization. So Reliance would be the largest, and then you keep going down. 1 to 100 is typically considered large cap. 101 to 250 is considered mid cap. And 250 and below is considered small cap. So when we say mid cap, we typically mean the 101st largest company in India all the way till the 250th largest company in India. Over a period of time, as share prices or market capitalizations change, the constituents can change, but the definition of mid caps broadly remains the same. Now, obviously, I've given you the basic explanation, but I also want to highlight one peculiarity, which is that most people generally assume that large caps, since they're the largest, are the safest. Then you have mid caps, which are faster growing but relatively less safe. And then you have small caps, which are the riskiest but the fastest growing, right? That's just broadly how you categorize. And for most parts, as an entire diversified pool, that is correct. But in India today, there are, I can't name on this call, but there are multiple mid-cap companies. For that matter of fact, there are some small cap companies which on a quality parameter, on a growth parameter, and even on a stability parameter can be much better than even some of the large caps. It is just that they are mid caps today because the markets that they are addressing in India today are relatively smaller in size. But as they grow over a period of time, as the target market, which is growing much faster, the industry that they operate in is growing much faster, eventually they will become large caps. So just 2 points over here, size-wise, it's sandwiched in the middle. And ऐसा नहीं है कि mid-cap माने more risky.
Right. And even the valuations, also the PE valuations, also looks reasonable when we look at that space when compared with large cap. And that's why SEBI came up with a definition, I believe, to classify as mid caps because there was a lot of confusion before.
Correct. And another way to think about it is that these are your future heroes in the making, right? They, unlike small caps, which let's say अभी भी relatively छोटे हैं, उनकी personality अभी भी develop हो रही है, उनकी business models अभी भी evolve हो रहे हैं. Mid caps में, since they are larger, they've already evolved. उनको पता है वो क्या कर रहे हैं, अच्छी तरह से 10-15 साल से प्रोसेसेस बनाए हुए हैं, अच्छी बड़ी कंपनी बन गई है. but at the same point of time, उनकी markets अभी भी grow हो रही है much faster, and therefore they give you best of both the worlds.
Right, absolutely. And when we speak of this spectrum from 101 to 250 companies, what would be the typical sectoral distribution जो उनके markets हैं in the index? And what are your views on different sectors and your current underweight and overweight positions in your mid-cap fund?
Right. The sectors that are addressed by midcap include financial services, and these are lending and non-lending financial services, right? So, right all the way from banks to non-lending as in insurance or capital markets or broking companies. Then you have consumer. One thing to note is that midcaps could possibly have a higher representation of discretionary spending in consumer rather than staples. Staples mane toothbrush, toothpaste, soaps, shampoos. Discretionary is more go out and buy, let's say, wedding, jewelry, things that people do once they increase in income, right? So midcaps has a higher representation of discretionary. And then after that, you have some of your more standard sectors, which you would typically find somewhere else as well. As we stand today, we are overweight, or we prefer lending or financial services. We believe that for the kind of growth that they are showing, valuations are still very reasonable. Second, we are also overweight on consumer discretionary. And that is because, very simply, I think the next 10 years in consumer is going to be very different from the kind of consumer growth that we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years. See, India is very unique. Why is India unique? Is because today, ये देश में अभी भी shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrush, उनकी भी growth आ रही है. इंडिया इतना अंडर पेनेट्रेटेड देश है कि इवन ऑन बेसिक कैटेगरीज लाइक सोप्स इंडिया ग्रो हो रहा है. बट एट द सेम पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इंडिया उतना भी गरीब नहीं है. वी आर ऑल्सो ग्रोइंग इन वेरी वेरी रिच कैटेगरीज. टुडे यू कैन काउंट द नंबर ऑफ cars or luxury cars on the street. India is growing in that as well. Now, as India's GDP grows, as people have more money, their needs and requirements change. So when मैं जब छोटा था तभी मुझे याद है I came from a very middle class family. हम साबुन से बाल धोते थे, right? वो I think 10-15 साल के बाद तो it's unheard of, right? Now shampoo is mainstream. If you ask most of my friends, वो लोग कंडीशनर भी यूज करते हैं, right? कंडीशनर is something which 10-15 साल पहले तो किसने सुना भी नहीं होगा कि भाई शैम्पू के बाद कंडीशनर भी लगाते हैं, right? So what I'm trying to say is that as income levels increase, right, and as people's basic needs are fulfilled, their ability to spend on newer and newer categories, health foods, wedding wear, closed footwear rather than just buying slippers or chappals and wearing it everywhere. All of these categories grow much faster. So we are overweight on consumer discretionary. And aside from that, we also enjoy and understand the theme of Make in India. ये एक अच्छा स्लोगन है, बट उसके पीछे काम काफी हो रहा है. So to give you an example, we like some of the chemical companies, specialty chemical companies in India. We think a lot has gone to make India less dependent on imports, but more importantly, make India an exporting hub as well in a lot of categories. आप evidence देख रहे हो electronics में, आप evidence देख रहे हो chemicals में. And we think that given that India may be a small percentage of global trade today, we have a lot of potential to continue to grow, not only for the next 2-3 years, but for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So these are the three sort of broad sectors that we are overweight on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And India consumer story is very strong. Uh, and there has been a lot of buzz in the market, particularly the last 6 month rally that we have seen in the mid and small cap space. So, how are you looking at the current valuation level in particularly in the mid cap space?
Right. तो सर देखिए, सबकी वैल्यूएशन की डेफिनेशन अलग होती है. मैं उससे ही शुरू करूंगा बिकॉज क्या है कि बिटवीन फाइनेंस टेक्स्ट बुक्स, पीपल हु एक्सप्लेन थिंग्स ऑनलाइन एंड व्हाट यू रीड इन न्यूज़पेपर्स, सबकी वैल्यूएशन की डेफिनेशन ही चेंज हो गई, अलग अलग होती है. काफी लोग के लिए वैल्यूएशन की आर्ग्यूमेंट क्या है कि पिछले 5 महीने में 50% से बढ़ गया है, दैट मीन्स महंगा है, विच इज नॉट नेसेसरली ऑलवेज ट्रू. सम पर्सन हुज अ लिटिल बिट मोर वेल रेड, वेल लर्नड विल से पीई रेशियो देखते हैं या फिर ईवी बाय एबिटा रेशियो देखते हैं या प्राइस टू बुक देखते हैं. बट while all of these are very useful tools, I'm not dismissing them at all. These are important parts of even when we do our work. It does not capture the whole story. Let me give you a small example, right? अगर मैं आपको आज एक बॉन्ड दे दूं हाथ में, क्या आप मुझे लोन दो, मैं आपको हर साल 10 रुपए दूंगा इन रिटर्न ऑफ दैट 100 रुपीज दैट यू गिव मी. आप सोचोगे कि भाई मेरी रिटर्न की रिक्वायरमेंट 10% है, ले तू मेरे पास. आप मुझे कितना दोगे? आप मुझे 100 रुपए दोगे, बिकॉज आपकी रिटर्न की रिक्वायरमेंट 10 रुपए है. अभी मैं आपको बोलूं कि सर मैं एक काम करता हूं, मैं आपको ईयर 1 में 10 रुपए दूंगा और हर साल उसको 5% से बढ़ाऊंगा, तो आप मुझे कितने का लोन दोगे? 100 रुपए से तो ज्यादा ही दोगे, बराबर है. आप मुझे 105 या 110 या 112 दोगे. व्हाट इफ आई केम एंड टोल्ड यू दैट एक काम करता हूं, मैं आपको पहले साल में 10 रुपए दूंगा, बट आई विल ग्रो दैट 10 रुपीज बाई 20% एवरी ईयर. आप मुझे कितना दोगे? आप मुझे 250-300 रुपए दोगे, क्योंकि आप क्या सोच रहे हो कि हर साल 20% से बढ़ रहा है. What I'm trying to say is that PE ratio looks the same in all of them.
Right.
But the true value of a company is captured not only in the bharosa that you have in me कि उत्सव actually दे पाएगा, and second, the amount of growth that you think he can do.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that high growth companies, while they look expensive on a lot of parameters, may not necessarily always be.
Absolutely.
And so we try to circumvent this problem by looking at price to fair value, right? Which is के fair value क्या होनी चाहिए? अगर आज 100 रुपए का प्रॉफिट है और उसकी फेयर वैल्यू 200 होनी चाहिए, तो आज 250 है या 150 है. कोई दूसरी कंपनी की 100 रुपए की प्रॉफिट है और उसकी फेयर वैल्यू 1000 हो सकती है, तो आज 900 पे है या 1200 पे. And accordingly we try to take a call. So to summarize your question, or to answer finally your question, how are we looking at market valuations today? As a whole, we're seeing that in large caps, there is a lot more safety as far as price to fair value goes. In mid caps, there is less so. And in small caps, there isn't at all. Price to fair value is out of whack. That said, and I'm sorry, ये थोड़ा लंबा खींच रहा हूं मैं, but it is important to understand.
No, I'm liking the answer.
We are at a very unique point in the market cycle right now. Why do I say it's unique? Is because in the last 6 to 8 months, interest rates have gone up so dramatically that people's view or the way they were looking at high growth stocks has changed. There is an entire financial explanation or a mathematical explanation as to why high growth stocks suffer the most in a rising interest rate cycle, especially as sharp as what we've seen recently, because puri value back-ended hai. But the point to understand over here is that while there may be, and apologies for the language, there may be froth to some extent in the smaller companies, you are also at a very unique point where some of the better high quality companies, which make very good returns on their investments, which are growing very fast, they are, to their fair value, relatively well priced. So as an investor today, I am at a point where मैं आपके सामने बैठ के बोल भी सकता हूँ कि हाँ, थोड़ी फ्रॉड दिख रही है, but at the same point of time, opportunity है over the next 3 to 5 years पैसा बनाने की, but you need to be selective and very, very sure about the philosophy that you're following.
Absolutely. And therein the professional fund management come into play to identify what you rightly said, price to fair value.
Correct.
And identify what kind of growth rate, growth potential, and the fair value the company is getting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And as you said, in the rising interest rate scenario, a lot of growth companies get affected. So my next question
Correct.
is coming on the global interest rate scenario.
Mhm.
There has been a lot of talk about how the interest rates have gone up. Now they are just kind of settling in. So how do you look at this scenario, and what are the key risks that you're watchful of?
Right. So while I am in the financial services industry and this is an important parameter that we track, let me be upfront saying that just like oil prices, इसमें prediction करना थोड़ा, my word is as good as any other person's word on the street, right? Because Fed क्या करने वाला है वो मैं यहाँ पे बॉम्बे में cabin में बैठ के beyond a point capture नहीं कर सकता. But at the same point of time, I think, so there are 3 scenarios, right? Global interest rates going up further from here, remaining where they are, and going down, right? We think going up from here, given the kind of evidence that you're seeing in the growth slowdown in the Western markets, the fact that already the level of hikes have started tapering off, it seems the least likely. So which means there are 2 major high probability events. Either interest rates remain where they are, or they go down from here. And in both scenarios, we believe that the price normalization of price to fair value has already happened in high quality, high growth stocks. Which means, so we at PGIM, we follow a very strict, well-defined process of involving ourselves only in high quality, as we define as high ROE or high quality, high growth stocks, right? And we believe that the normalization of price, relative price, has already happened and it's in the stock prices as we stand today. So in the 2 high probability events that interest rates remain where they are or interest rates go down from here, we believe that this is the best pool of companies to be in as we stand. Now, when will the market come to that realization? 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line, 12 months down the line? I don't know. But what I do know is that for a patient investor who has a reasonable horizon and who doesn't think they can time the market, this is the best strategy to be following today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, if you can just throw some light on your midcap fund, how is it constructed? And when you select a particular stock, we always get this question that what should be the correct investment horizon when we are investing into mid caps or small caps. When you are selecting a particular stock, what is your investment horizon at the fund level? And how is your portfolio constructed? If you can just throw some light on that.
Correct. So I think मैंने थोड़ा previous question में थोड़ा उसका जवाब दे दिया था कि we have a very strict and a well-defined process. The strict and well-defined process at step 1 says high quality, high growth, right? Because irrespective of market valuation cycles, over a longer period of time, and I'll come to the definition of longer, high growth and high quality will always win, right? But when we say high growth, high quality, we don't mean high growth and high quality in the last 10 years. वरना तो हम सब कर सकते थे कि एक अच्छा सा चार्ट बना दो, जिनकी आरओई बहुत हाई है, बहुत फास्ट ग्रो हो रहा है, उनको खरीद लो. We try to focus on the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years. We try to understand whether this company will qualify as a high growth, high ROE company. And out of our entire mid-cap universe of 150 stocks and some part of small caps, we try to create a narrower universe of high quality, high growth companies that we can technically buy. That is step one. So now we have a universe, let's say out 250 में से हमने 100 कंपनियां हमें अच्छी लगती है, and that meet this definition. Now हर एक अच्छी चीज लाइफ में अच्छे भाव पे नहीं होती. मैं अगर आपको बंबई में एक फ्लैट दिलवा दूं करोड़ रुपए में, तो बहुत ही अच्छी वैल्यू हो जाएगी. बट अगर मैं आपको 1 करोड़ का फ्लैट 10 करोड़ का फ्लैट दिलवा दूं, तो मे बी इट इज नॉट equally good value, right? Flat is the same, everything is the same, location is the same, but it's not good value. So we have a proprietary model where we spend a lot of time researching the company, understanding its growth, and हमारे internal model से हमें पता broadly पता रहता है कि कंपनी की fair value क्या होनी चाहिए. And only when we see a reasonable upside well into double digits over the next 3 to 5 years is when we buy the company. So there may be a lot of high quality, high growth companies which do not meet this parameter, but we also don't want to overpay. So that in a nutshell, and then added to that, when we come to the fund management level or the fund management overlay, we also try to ensure that we don't take very large deviations from sectors in the benchmark. We are very clear that 80% of our performance should be defined by our stock picking, not by going sector underweight, overweight, इसमें flows आ रहे हैं, FIIs ये sector खरीद रहा है. Because हमारी forte है कंपनी को समझना, उनको समझ के खरीदना. हमारी forte नहीं है कि US में बैठा हुआ FII कौन सा sector खरीदेगा. So we stick to that. As far as time horizon goes, उसके लिए हमने और एक स्टडी की हुई है. मे बी थोड़ी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड स्टडी है समझाना विदाउट विजुअल एड्स, बट लेट मी गेट अ ट्राई. NSE 500 की कंपनीज ले लीजिए आप. ओवर द लास्ट 15 years, वो कंपनीज का आप नेक्स्ट 3 year रोलिंग परफॉर्मेंस देखिए. बट बिफोर डूइंग दैट, यू बकेट देम इनटू 3 buckets. Is this company showing high growth and high quality, which is ROE? That is one bucket. It's showing both. One bucket is companies which is either just growing fast or just has high ROE but is growing slow, right? One of the two parameters fulfilled. And then there is a third bucket, which is ना तो high profits बनाता है अपने investments पे और ना तो grow हो रही है. ये 3 bucket में companies को divide करो एंड उनकी 3 year रोलिंग रिटर्न देखो, और ये एक्सरसाइज लास्ट 15 साल में ईयर आफ्टर ईयर आफ्टर ईयर रिपीट करो. आपके पास मोटा मोटी 1000 कंपनी का एक सैंपल साइज बनेगा, एंड देन यू रिपीट इट ओवर द इयर्स. वीव नोटिस्ड दैट ओवर अ 3 year रोलिंग रिटर्न बेसिस, देयर हैव बीन ओनली 2 instances where high quality, high growth has not outperformed. Unfortunately for us, one of the 2 instances is as we sit today.
Okay, understood.
So when you ask me my horizon, slightly long-winded answer, but when you ask me my horizon is typically 3 years. 3 years is a sweet spot between understanding the long-term valuation of a company, and also working on things that are visible as we stand today.
Right. And the reason, what I believe is that that's the thing that you said, that the one of the instances today, we have seen a very broader market rally. Even the last
Correct.
6 months, it has been that every stock you pick, and it has been a broader rally. And I think we have covered this before, but we have got this question on YouTube again, that after a great rally in mid-cap sector, is there any room for further upside? So I think you've answered this, like, then it's a stock because market now. Am I correct on this?
Yes, I think that it's not as easy to make money by just calling them all mid caps or just small caps. But we think there is still value out there, at least on a relative basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another question that everyone just speak about is about the upcoming elections, general elections. Though I've seen that for the past 20, 25 years, investors have made phenomenal returns in this 12 months period, just 6 months before the election. So what's your view on the political risk and this election?
So obviously, see, from the financial markets perspective, it cares mainly about stability of policy. Why is election important for a market participant? Is जो पॉलिसीज पिछले 10 साल चल रही है वो अगले 5 साल चलेगी या उसमें चेंज आएगा. Think beyond that. I think elections have a limited impact, but it certainly adds to near-term uncertainty. तो हम जो बात कर रहे थे कि भाई broader market rally है, सब कुछ चल रहा है, when can that correct? What can that event be? I don't know, but it could be anything. This adds another further level of uncertainty. But I think, Aditya, it is very important to understand, and I know thoda, it sounds like a gyan that everybody gives, but think about it, right? 1999 से अगर आप देखो, कोई भी मेजर पैरामीटर देख लो देश की प्रगति का, our GDP is grown irrespective at 6-7% real GDP growth. There will be some bad phases, there will be some, but broadly अगर आप केगर बेसिस पे देखो 6-7% से ग्रो हो रहे हैं. Look at some of the more micro parameters. मेरा हिस्ट्री मैंने काफी सारे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे रिसर्च किया हुआ है, तो एक छोटा सा पैरामीटर देख लो, पावर की चोरी जो 2003 में थी, 2008 में थी, 2012 में थी, 2023 में है, that is consistently at the same rate come down to now, which are levels which are unheard of in the past. You look at India's literacy index consistently going upwards. So what I'm trying to say is that elections are important from a policy and a near-term perspective, but hard to see how the India long-term or the medium-term growth story gets derailed. We are in a sweet spot in that sense. And there I have a lot more confidence where I can tell you that irrespective jo bhi ho jaye, we'll figure a way out of it.
Right. And I believe it's more of a sentimental play because fundamentals don't usually change a lot.
Absolutely not. I don't think people will stop using toothpaste, nor will they stop buying jewelry if things change. So I'm okay.
Absolutely. One question that we have got is you touched upon how growth companies get impacted in a high interest rate scenario. If you can explain how does that happen? How does that work?
Yes. Give me 1 second because I'm basically trying to explain a DCF concept orally, which is very hard sometimes. Right. So I'm trying to find a more simplified example. Okay, let's put it this way. आपने मुझे 100 रुपए दिए, आपकी रिटर्न एक्सपेक्टेशन 10% की है, ठीक है, मैं आपको इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट नहीं करूंगा, मैं आपको 10 साल के बाद 200 रुपए वापस करूंगा, ठीक है। तो नाउ assuming some time value of money, the real value is 220 or 250 that I'm supposed to return to you. तो मैंने आपको बोला मैं आपको 200 रुपए वापस करूंगा, आपको 100 रुपए एक्स्ट्रा मिलेंगे, आपने खरीद लिया, fair enough, you gave me the loan. Tomorrow your interest rate or your expectation of return changes to 11%. आप क्या बोलोगे? उत्सव 200 नहीं 220 रिटर्न करना पड़ेगा मुझे, ठीक है। बट मैं अगर आपको बोलूं कि मान लीजिए मैं आपको ईयर 10 में सिर्फ 100 रुपए रिटर्न करूंगा और ईयर 20 पे मैं आपको दूसरा 200 रुपये दूंगा, योर रिटर्न रिक्वायरमेंट वॉज ओनली 10%, सो यू सेड ओके, क्योंकि मुझे 300 रुपये मिल रहे हैं। मान लीजिए आपकी रिटर्न रिक्वायरमेंट 11 हो गई, तो आप कितना मांगोगे मेरे से? आप 110 और 220 मांगोगे, बराबर है। व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट इन अ हायर ग्रोथ कंपनी, राइट, a lot of the value generation comes after 10 years, comes after 5 years. आज अगर कोई कंपनी 5% पे 0% पे ग्रो हो रही है, आज 100 रुपए का प्रॉफिट है, आपको पता है 10 साल के बाद भी 100 रुपए का प्रॉफिट रहेगा, तो आप बोलोगे कि भाई इसकी वैल्यू 1,000 रुपए होनी चाहिए, मैं 10 टाइम प्राइस टू अर्निंग्स दूंगा, ठीक है। बट अगर मैं आपको एक कंपनी दूं जिसकी आज 100 रुपए की वैल्यू प्रॉफिट्स है और आपको पता है 10 साल के बाद 1,000 रुपए का प्रॉफिट्स है, तो आपकी रिटर्न एक्सपेक्टेशंस का जो इंपैक्ट आएगा उसके ऊपर will be much larger. So we've done a simple calculation which I can show. It's very hard to sometimes explain it on that orally, but basically because a lot of the cash flow generation is back-ended. Okay, sorry, simpler explanation. Imagine a company is not making profits today, but मैं आपको प्रॉमिस कर रहा हूं कि 10 साल के बाद 1,000 का प्रॉफिट होगा और वो 1,000 रुपए आपको मिलेंगे। अगर आपकी रिटर्न रिक्वायरमेंट 10% है, तो आप वो 10 साल के बाद की वैल्यू आप एक्स गिनोगे, आज प्रॉफिट है ही नहीं। इफ योर रिटर्न रिक्वायरमेंट इंक्रीजेस और इंटरेस्ट रेट्स इंक्रीज, देन वो जो 1,000 रुपए की वैल्यू है वो आज की तारीख में और कम दिखेगी। एंड टू गिव यू अ रेशियो, अ कंपनी growing its profits at 5%, for every 1% rise in interest rate, typically impact on value is 10 to 15% downwards. A company growing at 20%, the 1% rise in interest rate, the impact is close to 25 to 30%. Sorry, ये
Right,
थोड़ा difficult
right.
explain करना, but this is the gist of it.
I think it was a beautiful explanation. And your alternate options, as interest rate goes up, the debt becomes attractive, and then equity has to keep up to
Correct.
be attractive for the investor. Right. So I'll just check. Uh, so we are done with the questions.
Fantastic.
So if just the last question from our end is
Mhm.
if you can just speak a little bit more about your asset management company and your fund, your PGIM India Midcap Fund. It has been, I believe, it has been reconstructed, realigned recently, and what's you said it's a 3-year horizon. What should be the typical investment horizon in that particular? If you can just end the discussion on that note.
Yeah. So PGIM is a subsidiary of PFI International, which is Prudential Financial Institution USA. We are a fully owned company. We have been in India for multiple years now, and we've grown. We've been amongst the fastest growing asset management companies in India. And that is all thanks to our heritage of fund management as an overall global company as well, and that ethos that gets transferred to India. So we're all serious investors. We believe that a good focused philosophy of proper investments leads to long-term value creation for our unit holders. And that is what we try to live by on a day-to-day basis. It is very easy for a fund manager to look at month-to-month returns or day-to-day returns, feel the pressure and get carried away saying, "ठीक है, चलो ये चल रहा है, ये कर लेते." But we believe that long-term value creation and wealth creation is our core fundamental tenet. We do not chase near-term income, and we do not want to betray our core philosophy. We keep testing whether our core philosophy is working and whether it will continue to work. But as long as we are satisfied about that, हम वो change नहीं करते. About our midcap fund, PGIM Midcap Fund is, again, it is, you can check out, it's a well-rated, quite a large fund in context of its peers. Our philosophy across funds, irrespective of whether it's PGIM's midcap, flexi cap, small cap, we ensure that we as a team are always on the same page. We do not take Rambo-like individual calls. We like to run a very nice, diversified, entrenched across multiple sectors fund, but with a core philosophy of high growth and a high ROE rewards investors in their wealth creation journey. And we hope, and we will continue to hope, and we are in fact relatively confident or very confident that wealth generation is something that our funds will be able to deliver as India grows and as our stocks outshine the overall India growth story. Let me leave you with one very interesting anecdote for you and your audience if you all want to try this out. I'm not asking you to go back to 2009, 2013, long time ago, but something as recently as 5 years ago, to December 2016 and 17 calendar years. Just pick out any 5 or 10 random mid-cap and small-cap companies. And just randomly, आपको कोई दिमाग लगाने की जरूरत नहीं है, आप एक लिस्ट बनाओ, क्या था मिड कैप स्मॉल कैप वो टाइम पे, उसमें से 5 कोई भी रैंडम कंपनी चुन लो without doing any research. You would notice that more or less 8 out of 10 times you would have outperformed the Nifty over the next 2 years. 8 out of 10 times. But you keep holding those stocks in 2018 and 19. And 8 out of 10 times, all of those same stocks would have lost even more money than you made. To the extent that, by my calculation, anywhere between 70 to 80% of the times, you would have underperformed the Nifty over a 4-year period. What I am just trying to close this discussion off is to say that market rewards people who are disciplined. As long as a particular style works, you have to remain disciplined and dedicated to that art. Otherwise, the market will find a way to punish you. It may reward you in the near term, but it will punish you even more in the long term. So therefore, as a part of anybody's portfolio, since we received so many questions about after this stellar run, are mid caps or small caps overvalued, as a part of anybody's portfolio, it is hard to time the markets. It's hard to know what is the peak, right? अभी तो मैं retrospect में बोल रहा हूँ 2017 peak थी, but अब आज हमें थोड़ी ना पता है. As a part of somebody's good mutual fund portfolio, I think it is an important facet to own that this person is following a philosophy of high growth, high ROE. It creates wealth over a longer period of time. And therefore, while it may not work over short periods of time, it will definitely deliver long-term wealth, and therefore we should own it.
Such a beautiful thought to leave with. And we also strongly believe that the biggest component in making long-term wealth is your discipline and your asset allocation. That's what we believe in. Thank you so much, Utsav, for
My pleasure.
such powerful insights. I really like the way you explain the art of valuation and how valuation gets decided in different spaces, how there's different perspective on looking at the valuation. Thank you so much for joining in, addressing our audience, and we look forward to doing these talks with you and your team more in future. And thank you everyone in the audience for joining in.
My pleasure. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.